Yeah, it's always about just whatever you resonate with. And I always share with others, allow your own resonance, what feels true and natural and like the next step for you to guide you, and it's always going to be what you need. Even if it like results in some sort of unpleasant experience or some apparent failure, that itself is the very thing that you needed in that moment that guides you in the right direction then from there.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master Sun Ching. I'm still not tired of it. I'm just going to have to be honest with you. It's Christmas Day. I come down to the tree and look what the incredible universe has given me. This amazing being I want to welcome to the podcast, Sunny Sharma, who's also basically the founder of the Self-Inquiry School, a conscious creator, a conscious seeker, and a conscious teacher. And I want to welcome you to the podcast today, my dear friend.
Thank you, son. It's a pleasure to be here.
It really is. I always welcome incredible conversation with amazing beings like yourself that are contributing to the reawakening, the remembrance of helping the conscious collective remind themselves they know who they are. And so I would love you to just start with a couple of minutes, just sharing with the audience a little bit about yourself leading up to this moment.
Regarding my story?
Yeah. Whatever you want to share.
Yeah. So my spiritual journey started very similarly to most people, which is after a period of suffering. So I went through a spinal injury a long time ago, which really led me to a difficult period of, it was very difficult physically and emotionally. After that phase, because those are the types of phases which make you search a little deeper and start to make you question the deeper questions of life. I started coming across some beginner spiritual teachings, which really provoked my interest at that time. They were more so around like healing my body, which was like the main thing for me at that time. And then started to mold into more like personal development and just beginner meditation practices. So that was a really interesting period for me, which was all about learning to heal myself. For the first time, I really started to understand, like you can start to improve your life by learning to change your beliefs. And yeah, so just started to go in that direction. And then as it unfolded, it was the whole journey of empowerment, law of attraction. So I spent a lot of time there. And it was a fun teaching. It was like those teachings at that time really lit me on fire, because it was like finally, I felt more in charge of my life, because I went through a period where I had felt like I was just a victim. So this period where like these teachings were introducing so much, just like a new way of seeing life, it was very, very empowering. So I really benefited from those teachings. I started to heal. Also started to really move towards, creating the life that I wanted to live. But I started to recognize that no matter how much I would achieve, or what I would, whatever desire I would fulfill, I would still notice the mind being restless, always afraid of the future, never feeling enough, one desire leading to another. Like that unfulfillment really piqued my interest, because it never ended. It always felt like it was promised that once this thing was achieved, or this thing would be acquired or attained, that unfulfillment would diminish. It would, I would feel whole again. But like, no matter what experience I was able to acquire, it wouldn't go away. And so like, that was the very transformative period, because that's where like these subtler teachings, the deeper teachings, realizing your true nature, self-inquiry, awakening to your true self, they really started to come into my experience. So that was a very big turning point in my life, because for the first time, it was no longer about what I can chase out there, but rather really seeking the truth of myself within. So that's really the main practice and the main teachings that I now really talk about on YouTube and work on with people. It's the practice of self-inquiry, which is a learning to turn inward and discerning your true self apart from all transient experiences. Learning to grow in self-knowledge, awareness of self, awareness of who I truly am prior to the person that I appear to be in the life that I appear to be living. Yeah.
And that sounds like a very powerful embodied spiritual awakening that can sort of like be reflected on many platforms or belief systems. It's almost Gnostic in its nature, in a knowing sense of the word. I reflected on a lot of things, identifying sort of people's spiritual path with Taoism in of itself, just understanding that, all is one, one is all, and that you find the truth within yourself. Was there anything that drew you to a specific sort of like understanding of how that made it so for you, like a deeper knowing and practice? So identifying and discerning what is true and what is not. What sort of mastery or method did you find was the most effective for you to continually?
Yeah. So the major the main thing for me was self-inquiry meditation, because it has a capacity to bring you out of concepts, which are all just ideas about who I am, what life is. It's all beliefs, and it's on the level of attention. It brings you out of concepts into the realm of direct experience. So I remember the first time I read the book Who Am I by Ramana Maharshi, and I encountered this practice where, rather than having your attention scattered in your experience, the objects of experience, he asks us to bring your attention inwards to the I which experiences them, which is aware of them. So I remember that first moment where I practiced that, and that was the first time that I was not aware of experience, but aware of myself. And so that really drew my interest. And that's the practice that I feel like has been my main meditation practice. It's an inward turning away from object towards the subject, I, because throughout our life, everything changes. Not just the world that we perceive as outside of us, but also the body and the mind, even the subtle aspect of the mind, the personality, self-image. All of these things continue to change. Yet I remain as I am. I continue to refer to myself as I. The body's changing, the mind is changing. Everything that I appear and believe myself to be is changing. But there's something which feels as self, which we feel as our sense of being, our sense of identity. It is not going through any change. It is changelessly accompanying all changeful phenomena. So that was like the main instrument of discernment that I learned from Ramana Maharshi's teachings and some other teachers since then. But it's this process of self-inquiry, learning to see in this moment and every moment, what is it that does not change? The contents of our experience continue to change, but there's something here which is present, which is ever present, but it is not changing. It itself is not appearing as any particular sound or thought or sensation, yet it is aware of all sounds and thoughts and sensations. So it is like learning to look with a different eye, I call it the eye of wisdom, or we can call it like eye of awareness, where it's like, rather than just being outward into what I know, I start to become aware of the self that knows. Awareness of self, the I which is aware. So that was a really, really, and continues to be a very profound practice that I continue to this day.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very much like how I teach people to go from first person, third person, no person. And you could even mix that up between a third and a first to a no. It's sort of truly being this present moment, which within Taoism is the Wu Ji, the stillness between the breath in and the breath out. It's now.
Yeah.
It happens now. And that's so powerful, what you speak of, my friend. And, you know, that realization, how you came to that moment.
Yeah.
It's speak a little bit more about Ram. I'm not familiar with the person you're speaking of. Share with you.
His name is Ramana Maharshi. He was
Okay.
a guru from India. His main technique that he offers to the people is self-inquiry, which is the main question, which covers the main question of spirituality, of all spirituality. Who am I, or what am I? Because it is this is the question which, for the first time, turns our interest away from transient experiences, right, towards myself. So the Ramana shares with us that all of our suffering, all of our belief systems are all rooted in a false identification of self with the transient experiences, with our ideas of I, of who I am. So learning to turn inwards and learning to isolate your sense of being away from all concepts, away from all thoughts about I, starts to help us to discover our real nature. Mind continues to project ideas about who I am, and those are concepts. But our sense of being is very real, is very true, and it is ever present in every moment. It shines as I. So we learn to take our attention away from the thoughts which project ideas about who I am, and we bring that attention inwards to what I actually am. It's just I am. I am is the only real fact. I am this, I am that. Like, these are all ideas, right? We have to think ourselves in order into being something. Like, I am a person. I am doing this. I am thinking. I am feeling. So it's like our I amness, our beingness, we attribute to thinking, feeling, doing, and all the other ideas of mind. So this is how we step into conceptual reality. We step into false notions of what life is, who I am. To step out of these ideas, we bring our attention away from these thoughts inwards towards ourself, and we learn to dwell in that sense of beingness, which is not different from what we feel as the present moment. What is the present? It is my presence. Within my presence, all sorts of experiences come and go. All sorts of different versions of the body even come and go. Different versions of the personality come and go. But my presence is the only unchanging experience. So yeah, that was his main practice, which really resonated with me. It's a very direct meditation. It's not a meditation on the breath. It is not a meditation on body sensation. It is like the most pure definition of meditation, which is just awareness of being, awareness of self. Yeah. So his name is Ramana Maharshi.
Now you expanded on that, being aware of self, which is nothing, not a place, person, or thing. It's just this present moment. What do you do to cultivate beyond that Are you looking for, I have a dear friend, one of my dear friends is a Buddhist monk, and all he does is look for dukkha. His whole journey is about observing the dukkha, and that's it. Doesn't want the energetics, not interested in it. I just want to be still, observe that, and not let that control my experience. Okay. What as a seeker, as a cultivator, what is it that you're looking to create or get from your path?
Realization of self, realization of my real nature,
Mhm.
realization of truth. What is true? What is that which is not impermanent? Um, the highest goal of spirituality, realization of truth. Yeah. So it's not about creating that, because that which is always is, cannot be created, and we cannot hope to attain it in as like some sort of experience, because any experience that would appear also disappears. So yeah, with this practice, it's about realization of your true nature, understanding our real self beyond personality. Our source is also another way of saying
Okay.
it.
So would you say there's an absolute truth?
All I would say is that rather than theorizing whether what's there or what's not, the fact is, in the only fact that I can be sure of in this experience is I am. And so this practice of self-inquiry, we focus on that one fact, I am. I don't know what I am, because everything I appear to be continuously changes. Therefore, I cannot be that, because I'm the observer of its changing, but I know I am. So what exactly is? What is that which is, yet is not any object that is perceived or any concept that is conceived? So that is the essence of this practice, to discover that which is. Now we can we can theorize or label that which is as self or God or truth, right? But these are all labels for that. The truth is, like, the only fact that we have right now is I am. And so yeah, that's really the main working practice with this. Something is aware of experience. I know that something is also myself because I am aware of experience. But what exactly is that? Is that a thought? Is that a sensation? Is that a sound? You know? So this is about the discovery of that which is.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me to define what the seeker's, cultivational practices are. Within Taoism, we have a very clear method of cultivation within the Nigong, which is internal power, using Nidan, which is internal alchemy, creating a very distinct separation of electric and magnetic spectrum, and especially anything subject to what is in this perceived 3D reality is that, and I think this is going a testament back to what you just said, titles, theories. I get it. What I would say is, from my own contribution, having been on this conscious journey for myself for over 32 years, it's teaching people these types of things. You have to get to a certain point through your own cultivation to even ask the question that whatever's in the mirror is actually not your identity, but this flesh and blood that is an anchor to, whatever this experience is that you identify as yourself,
Mm-hmm.
is problematic for most seekers because they're separated. And so that present moment is unobtainable to be all things. All is one, one is all. Within Taoism, between the breath in and the breath out, is the Wu Ji, the stillness that reveals the mother of all things, the Tao. And, you know, these, from your own admission, would seem like titles or theories or concepts. And that's why it's so important to create a practice that can identify, discern, and affirm what it is that you're experiencing. It's not just some psychotic episode you're having in your mind. It's palpable, it's tangible. So what I like to do is teach people, you know, starting off with, you know, developmental skills, clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, healing, physical healing, manifestation, all that kind of good stuff, which then can be repeatable and then verifiable, experiential, self-evident within this 3D reality. So it's sort of like a journey. Like if I give someone a practice of cultivation, they can measure their actual results within the first time they experience it. So an experience would be like 27 minutes for what I share with people. And after that first 27 minutes, when they experience it, the first thing that happens to them within seconds is a visceral feeling with a visual and audible experience creating a kinesthetic charge, which would be very reminiscent of most people's responses. I've had 5 pina coladas, a full body massage in 10 days in the Bahamas. And so then they're like, whoa, I didn't have a belief system. I didn't believe in God. I worked for McDonald's. I cleaned toilets. Or you have the Dalai Lama equivalent who's like, whoa, I've spent 30 years on a mountain meditating, and this has just changed my whole sense of reality, which I think is pretty much in line with what you're saying, is this coming to the present moment. I just like the idea of having a structured method that will be repeatable.
Yes.
And I believe that you have that. I'm just having that inquiry to refine more of that, because that perhaps maybe the I am inquiry, self-inquiry is enough, or do you have something that's a little bit more in a cultivational practice that would help the seeker define their journey a little more?
I think once, and also that's the beauty of like many different types of teachers and systems and traditions, that we are naturally drawn towards that which is best for us, you know. So the main practice that I focus on is self-inquiry, and generally whoever is attracted to my message and comes to me is resonant towards that and wants to learn more about that. For some who feel that this practice is a bit too subtle, and awareness of awareness is not an accessible practice, feels too subtle or maybe abstract for them, then
I wouldn't say that. I would say that it's quite advanced. I'm just a little bit more curious as how you, because it's a very clear method. It's got an incredible resonance to it. I would just say that, you know, if I got someone green behind the ears from McDonald's cleaning toilets, he might have a tough time with I am.
Exactly. Typically, they wouldn't be receptive to that message even, or, you know, perhaps it wouldn't even come into their experience. That's a beautiful thing that I had noticed in my own journey. It's like, if this was the first spiritual teaching I had encountered, I probably wouldn't have been receptive or been able to like really approach it. So I feel that, yeah, you can say it is a little more advanced or direct method of practice, which is why if someone does feel it's too subtle, then what I share with them is a very direct practice as well, but it's a little more, has a little more like something to hold on to. Something, it's like it's more concrete, which is awareness of body sensation, which is what they teach in the Vipassana. Learning to simply observe sensation of the body without judgment, without interpretation, without attachment, without resistance, without any form of mental commentary, just learning to observe. Just learning to observe. Because this itself starts to help us to awaken to the transient nature of all experience, including body sensation, and starts to help us to recognize that changeless awareness from where I perceive the changeful experiences. So then, you start to, it's like the Buddhist principles, right? One, we have to realize that everything is impermanent. That's the nature of experience, impermanence, or the characteristic of experience, impermanence. And two, that there's no self in experience, in anything we experience. So once we start to just observe without judgment, without any sort of commentary, description, just plain observation, awareness of experience, we start to see that all experience comes and goes. And I am not something which comes and goes. So we start to see that there's no self in any phenomena. And the third characteristic is suffering. When I identify myself with any experience, when I identify with any phenomena, there's suffering. So once we start to see that, hey, all is impermanent and I am not that which is changing, then the question naturally bubbles up. Then what am I? What is it that perceives? And that's an inward. So now we can learn to like turn our gaze inward, even away from sensation towards awareness. So rather than awareness of sensation, the practice becomes awareness of awareness. And awareness is not an object that we can see or focus on. It is more so, so it is like a different knowledge. It's not an awareness of something. It is an awareness of myself being. Awareness of self is awareness of being. I am. So, yeah, those are the two practices I work around.
Yeah, it's just very powerful stuff. I would just have to add that it's quite an advanced understanding, and that's completely okay. Like you said, you're resonating for a certain seeker will find you. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be something that some green behind the ears never even contemplated mindfulness as potential breakthrough. It would probably be problematic for them. I think that go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just about to say, although it does happen sometimes. Sometimes I do have some people who will join our school and they're brand new to spiritual teachings, and it's very fascinating for me too how like sometimes it is like, and it's rare, but it happens that like such a deeper teaching comes into their experience very early on, whereas like many people and including myself, like there had to be a certain amount of spiritual practice and certain amount of beliefs broken for a practice like this to come into our experience. But that is the beautiful part of the spiritual journey. Like we can't put the spiritual journey into a box and say this is exactly how it must be or this is exactly what it is. It's so unique in every expression. It's so like different in everybody's unique little individual experience. So yeah,
it's that cross-sectioning of east to west and understanding what that really means.
Yeah.
Because, even today, I find that a lot of people are leaning on science to try and qualify their spiritual journey, which I think is problematic. It's a very new language. It's not ancient like the teachings that you and I share with people. So it's kind of a little fragmented, even though they would seem to have you believe that they have a very deep understanding of the nature of reality. The Taoists have known about this for tens of thousands of years, probably hundreds of thousands. And
Yeah.
that timeline is sort of like, you know, potential fodder for some scholar or academic that wants to argue that there's not even a human timeline that goes back that far. That's just not true. You get to understand the nature of it by the feeling, the actual visceral effect, the contraction, the way you speak on things that are transient, that nothing is permanent except yourself, understanding that being that you are all things, that means that you are nothing at the same time. And to do that would be the I am, I believe, that you were speaking of.
Yeah.
Understanding that present moment.
Yeah. The aspect of self-inquiry is like the first aspect of self-inquiry is learning to separate your beingness, your sense of identity away from all objects, of all concepts about myself. So we learn to discern self and not self, right? Just beingness away from all transient experience. But then we have to also come to see that I am the essence of all, even transient experience. I am the essence of all appearances. The appearances, all the transient experiences, they don't have any beingness separate from me. I am that also. So at first, it's like the step is I am not that, I am not that, not this, not that, and then it's like an inclusiveness where I am all. So, but the I think the more important, the harder work is the first step, which is learning to isolate your beingness, isolating yourself apart from all other experiences, because it is such a habit of the mind to just operate from the assumption I am this person, all the assumptions like that are arising in thought every second. It just like we just automatically identify. We instill so much belief in those judgments, those ideas. So when we get into these this introspection, the self-inquiry, we must not take anything for granted. We must not take any assumption to be true, and we must be willing to like open to the we must be willing to be open to the possibility that everything that I have believed up until this point may not be true. It's not that we create another belief about how things really are. We don't create beliefs about the self or reality or God. But we learn to stand empty of all belief, empty of all thought about anything. And in just being myself and just being present, we start to come to know all that we need to know. That's how I really felt it. Like this presence, which is always illuminating this moment, is the source of all knowledge. And just by being quiet, turning away from commentary about things to just this inner presence, wisdom begins to mature within us. And then it reflects in the mind and in the ability to have these types of conversations. But yeah, I really feel that like it's so funny. You can see it. Sometimes you try so hard to understand something through the mind, and you get nowhere. Whereas in a moment of silence, sometimes it just a great clarity and insight just comes to you. So we can see, that's why I just stopped trying to figure anything out with my mind. That's when I started to realize that I was like, I really want to commit to this path of silence, because theories and concepts, they're just too tiring for me. I'm just no longer interested.
So when did you start this school?
I started the school about maybe 2 to 3 years ago. Before that, I had my YouTube channel, but I used to more so talk about the empowerment teachings. Like now it's mainly focused in self-inquiry. The school has been around for about 3 years. Yeah.
And what is the normal progression? Like how long would it take for you to go through that processes of cultivation?
So in the school, we have a 10-week course, and it's a day-by-day progression. So every single day there is a lesson, like sort of a experiential guided meditation, where, because like, because this practice is not about conceptual learning, it is more so about learning to turn inward. The way that I've made the course is guiding the seeker inward in many different ways, right? Because the ways of getting there are many, but the place where we reach through all those different paths is the same. So through the course, I do my best to guide the seeker in many ways. And when you approach it in many ways and you keep it ending up in the same place, then it starts to click. You're like, oh, this is what is being referred to. So the course, is a very meditative experience. It's not really about like learning things, because that's not, it's not about the theory. And so as they progress through that, their progress is not under my control. All I can do is do my best to guide, but I try to guide them through all the different ways of just sinking into, melting into awareness. And the rest, silence takes care of,
Yeah, no, it sounds almost reminiscent of how I teach people. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling.
Yeah, well said.
And it's normally a visual audible experience, and that kinesthetic visceral charge, somatic experience, the culmination, the syntax of all things. You have everything embodied comes in that imprinted sort of deep knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is in what do they normally do after the 10 weeks? Do they continue on their path cultivating, or do they stay in the school, or what's the normal process after that?
Yeah, usually depending on what they feel is best. So of course we do many things inside the school. The course is just where, like, it's the main teaching place, but in the school we do like weekly meetings, weekly guided meditations, which are live. Then we do online retreats as well. So as they go through the course, they're also able to interact with our community, other members who are going through the same process. So after the 10 weeks are over, we have some other courses inside of the school as well. Like I have a whole course on the Bhagavad Gita teachings, which is a beautiful, overall, like, it just really teaches you how to live your life for truth, live your life for God. And so many different resources. So if they wish to continue the learning after their 10 weeks, they can continue in the school. Some even find just like they just love the weekly meetings, because in the weekly meetings we do like a Q&A and also just guided and silent meditation. So it's a powerful atmosphere when everybody comes together for the sake of this sort of practice. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned God, so we're not resonating with anything Buddhist related. This is sort of a yogic path, Sanskrit, Hindu. What would be the definition of the path that you're going on? Because it's a variable. Yeah. People, Yogalinda. Have you heard of this guy, Yogalinda?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he came from a certain part of India, and he came out in the Western world back in the 60s and was, I guess for a better word, preaching the gospel of his yogi Babaji, and a path of Christ consciousness. So sort of like a culmination of a few different things. What would you say is the core, resonating value? Is it God? Is it Jesus? Is it what is it?
Yeah. When I say the word God or self, or I'm really just referring to that which is, or truth. Like I like to use these words synonymously.
Right.
I don't think there is a difference. So
hang on a second.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Somehow I'm getting. Are you still there, Sonny?
Yes.
I've got some. Unfortunately, I don't have my technical support with me, which is my wife.
Oh, no
So
worries.
you were right there in front of me and then disappeared. I
No,
apologize.
no worries. It's
I
okay.
was like, hang on a second, where is he gone? I'm hearing voices. Is that God? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but yeah, when I use that word, I use it synonymously with self
Okay.
or reality, truth. Simply that which is that would or a source. You know, the way that I like to share the teachings is not any attached to any particular lineage or tradition. I would because I've throughout my journey, I have felt the importance of not necessarily being attached to any particular teacher or teaching, although there are many teachers that I really respect and admire and look up to and feel love for. But I've seen throughout my spiritual journey, I've taken bits and pieces from many different um, traditions. So like the lineage of Babaji and Yogananda, I'm like the SRF lineage. Like I find great value in their teaching, and I've learned great like learning. I've great. I've learned great devotion from those teachings. You know, Yogananda was like an expression of pure love, um, living for God, living for truth. So I've sourced great devotion from his teachings. Ramana Maharshi, he's been the person who like I've brought me a lot of clarity, and of course the main integral practice that has been the most beneficial for me, but also the teachings of Nisargadatta Maharaj, who is also another non-dual teacher, but also many Buddhist teachings as well. So I try not to attach myself to any particular lineage or anything, but like I just try to take whatever arises in my experience and try to learn from it. And then whatever I share in the school or on the YouTube channel is like a mix of all the teachings along with my experience of them and what I found to be the most beneficial and direct in terms of practice. So like my main focus is like helping people facilitate conceptual understanding into direct experience, because in my own path I've seen that like once you really understand a teaching clearly and know how to practice it, and then really, despite your conditioning and reactions, you do your best to practice it. You do your best to really live your life in accordance to the teachings you are learning. That makes all the difference. And the main thing that I started to see in a lot of spiritual circles is that there's a lot of theorizing and conceptualizing and video learning and book learning, but people are struggling with practice. So that was my main goal, is like helping people facilitate how to bring these teachings into their life. And so in the school, the foundation of our practice is, of course, the silent self-inquiry, where we turn inward. And from that, you know, everything else flows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned Buddha. Do you also inquire into Shiva?
In what
Well,
particular
Shiva
way?
is
Do you mean
sort of
specific?
representative of like sort of like another Hindu immortal
Yeah.
like being, like Shiva and Shakti is equivalent to consciousness and energy, sort of like sort of states.
Yeah. No, not particularly. Yeah, I haven't encountered many teachings in regards to that. So no, nothing like that. But Krishna is another um, great teacher from India, and you know his gospel, which is the Bhagavad Gita. Those teachings have definitely impacted me greatly as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's never ending being a part of that diamond, that facet of consciousness, having people get a greater insight, download this awareness, this pure source, um, you know, direct source information.
What
I
drew you to Taoism?
um, it was like a little voice that sort of started me on my journey, and I was like literally spent most of my time as a young boy warding off bullies. I started becoming a power lifter and a bodybuilder at the age of 11.
Wow.
I was 20. I was,
That young?
11 years old. Actually, I think it was 10. Picked up Education of a Bodybuilder by Arnold Schwarzenegger. And by the time I was 16, 15, I did my first bodybuilding show. I was like 187 pounds at about 4% body. Then by my late teens, I was, squatting, hundreds of pounds, 500-pound squat, 700-pound deadlift. My body was saying, you need to take a break. Yeah. And there's a voice telling me, hey, go inside. Like, okay, go inside what? What do you, find this thing called meditation. And back in those days, meditation for me was, Hare Krishna, yogis, Gandhi, Dalai Lama. And I was just like, a bodybuilder, I don't do that kind of stuff. I crush things and throw things. And so, that was kind of like where I started. So I went looking for meditation, which was very foreign, in the 70s and 80s. It was very, very far in the Western world. It was just started becoming integrated, after the Beatles sort of started to pump out some music and this idea. And then Yoga Linda, bringing over all this other sort of insight and the Hare Krishnas. And, there was always the incredible bubbling of ideas of this greater sense of knowing, but it was so thin, the audience or people even searching for that stuff. And so meditation was a big thing. I found some little guru that was offering a free class. I was like, beggars can't be choosers. Went into this thing that they call meditation. I was like an overgrown ape, sort of trying to sit in the lotus position. I just looked like this, this Neanderthal scratch where I couldn't even do it. My back was hurting.
Man.
I'm looking around the room going, I'm in one of the beggars. I'm in the beggar category. It's free. This little woman, she's like 50 pounds, saying she's some grandmaster of like a Qigong or something. And she's offering a free meditation class in a local rec center, which I took my life into my own hands. Quite frankly, it was a ghetto, guns going off, ambulances, dogs barking in the background outside. So we're sitting around, I'm looking around the room. There's probably half a dozen misfits like myself, just freebies. We're looking for a freebie. And this woman's like, okay, now I want you to listen to my voice. And when she said that, I was like, listen, in my mind, I'm thinking, listen, lady, this is not going to work. I don't know what this meditation stuff is, but I can tell you all this nonsense. And this is what I was thinking. And then she goes, I want you to listen to my voice. And when I stop talking, everything will fade away. And I was, in the same second that she said that, I was like going, yeah, right. And then 1 second after she said that, complete silence. And then she was standing there going, and I sat there and went, what? Complete silence. Nothing. Nada. Entry point. We're talking the present moment, my friend. It happened right now. And I couldn't hear her. And I'm like, this is not a figment of my imagination. This went on for 20 minutes. There was no sound in the background, no sound in front of me. It was complete stillness with my eyes open. I'm like, I'm onto something. I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
But I want it. And it was so profound. And it wasn't until she finished the meditation did the sound come back. But this was going on for 20 minutes. I was like completely petrified and completely curious. It's like, how is this happening? How is this possible? How does this even happen? So that was my entry point. How did I get into it? And then I went on my path pursuing being ordained in 2 lineages of Taoism. And I've been doing that for about 30 years. And I even remember, though, you have these moments where you look back and you go, oh, there's all these intervals of where I am, the universe, God, Tao Buddha is going, hello, see me over here. You're in the wrong place. Come over this way. And you start looking at the timeline. You go, oh, man, it happened here, here, and here, and here. Yeah. And this happened to me when I was a child. I mean, I was a young boy. I got hit by a car head on with with a
Wow.
drunk driver. And the only reason I survived was the bike I was riding had plastic tufts on it. They weren't like spoke and aluminum wheels that would have crumbled. So this wheel was made out of hard plastic. It got jammed between the car and the road. I got shot up in the air about 100 feet, what seemed like feet, but I saw the top of the trees. I landed on the side of the road. I got up, and all I could remember is, I want to see my mother before I die. And then I came out of my body. I came up over the road, floated over my house, went all the way down the street like Peter Pan. And I was like out just exploring. And then what seemed like, 20 minutes, then I came back into my body in the hospital, where they laid my body pretty much to rest in peace.
Wow.
And I was conscious again, and they were just like, "Oh my goodness, he came back!" Just wild.
At what age was that?
I was about 8.
Wow.
I was 8, and you just start to realize that. And then soon after that, when I started the bodybuilding, I found a friend at school whose father had trained with Bruce Lee.
Wow.
And at that point, Bruce had been dead, maybe 7, 8 years. I think he was dead, 73, something like that. And so this was like exciting. This is like, I want to hurt people. I'm being bullied at school. I need to beat people up. That's kind of like why I picked up bodybuilding. And this guy was like, yeah, sit down, take a pen and paper and sit down. This was the father of this friend, this girlfriend from school. And I'm like, listen, I want to beat people. This is martial arts. I'm not interested in writing down stuff. That's not for me. And he goes, sit down and write. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Beat people. He's like, okay, pick me. And this guy made it, I was a big kid. I was a husky kid. And this guy was a little 50-pound sort of Asian man with palms the size of like baseball mitts. And I was mesmerized by the palms. I was like, this is so weird. His hands, and they look like leather. They look like leather, and they're huge. I was mesmerized by that, but I was more concerned about like hurting some old man. You know what I mean? I was like, so I'm not going to hit me. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Well, kick me. And I'm like, if I kick you, I'm going to break you in half. Go ahead. And he just stood there, sort of like with one foot in front of the other. And I wound my leg up and I kicked him. I thought I broke my leg.
Wow.
And I was like in so much excruciating pain. It seemed like 5 minutes it took me to come back down to planet Earth. And I was just like, you must broke my leg. Hang on a second. You're the one who wanted to kick me. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. He goes, we're not ready. Here's a pen and paper. Sit down. And I'm just like, I did that for 2 weeks. I was like, this is not for me. And I think that was the first, it's not, I know that's the first time the Tao was like, this is your chance. You can do this right now. And so we always have these moments. What about yourself? Did you have any experiences that would have put you on the path that you could recall from your childhood or leading up to it?
Yeah. Well, you're a very good storyteller, by the way. That was entertaining.
Thank you.
But, this is something that I also share with everybody, that because oftentimes it can feel like we're trying to force our way forward and trying to make spiritual progress. But I find that the spiritual path is so much more about surrendering and letting go, and letting that same intelligence which brought you on the path continuing to take you deeper. So it's not like we're making a way forward by forcing it, but rather being pulled. And the more we allow that, rather than resist and fight to keep our current belief system in place, the faster and the more harmoniously we experience it. So yeah, for me, I never had any sort of childhood experiences like that particularly. Before my spinal injury and going through that really a couple of years of suffering, I was not at all interested in any spiritual matters, And also I grew up in India, so religion and spirituality was always around me because it's very prominent over there, but I was never particularly interested in it. But when it did come into my life, I grew such a fire for it, like such a strong passion for it, that it really felt like the most important thing, the most urgent thing. So that's like the intensity with which I approached it, and I'm glad I did, because it truly is like, once we start to really, so Ramana Maharshi, the teacher I told you about, he always says, like, if you take care of the highest, or if you pursue the highest, the lower motives, they all take care of themselves. This is really how I felt. I felt this to be very true in my experience. As we start to pursue the greatest question of life, who am I? What am I? All the lower things that we previously were so obsessed about and trying to control and manipulate, they sort of start to fall into place. But if we like stay so obsessed with them, we miss the bigger picture, and we still don't find happiness in the small things. So yeah, that's a very interesting way of seeing it, that like really these shifts in perspective help you spiritually and personally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important. I think it is, and most people come to that realization in one way, shape, or form. Coming across you or me, you have that epiphany. You're like, oh, now I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get it. Now I understand.
And it's funny that we can't really, when it's your time, it's your time. There's no way of, like, we didn't make that happen. Nobody makes it happen. Nobody chooses to go on the path. The path presents itself. Yeah, very, very interesting.
The seeker. Within Taoism, we always remind the man mortality is real.
Mm-hmm.
And when you believe you're not of this body, what can harm you?
Yeah. Very nice teaching.
Nothing.
Yeah.
That's that present moment. And that's when you can truly embody being abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And that comes from that cultivational practice.
Yes.
When you get there and you really embody that stuff, the potential of immortality, which is part of the Taoist journey and seeker, is cultivating practices. The internal alchemy is to cultivate the true nature of the micro to macro. So everything is within you, outside of you, as above, as below, the whole, everything is mind. That understanding, the present moment, is that when you truly believe you are not of this body, you can then embody you can be the present moment, which means that immortality is an option, limitless, infinite, abundant.
Yeah.
And so the physical flesh can be subject to that cultivation. And that's what we do within Taoism, is create that longevity, so that you take this vehicle as far as possible within this incarnation, and you become the maestro of the 50 trillion cells that you perceive as your physical flesh and blood, harnessing and captivating at 0.07 millivolts of electricity. And then all of a sudden, Harry Potter ain't got nothing on you. Energy, my friend. It's that funny, because that's always been something that's captured my attention, is the ability to perform that. So, it's very easy for me to get someone's attention, take my forearm, envelop it in anesthesia, run a skewer through, pull it out, and you won't see the entry or exit point, and go, what the? How did you do that? It's all energy. And, when you're channeling a higher state of knowing, whether you define that as just being I am, there's a substance that is not from this 3D reality, this light spectrum, this electromagnetic spectrum. And so you're returning to perfection. When you do that, things go very strangely in an expansive state of this subatomic particles of this flesh and blood. And so when I channel Lao-Tzu, my teacher, I can put my hand over a flame like a lighter. I can hold it there for minutes at a time, pull it off, and there's no distortion of the flesh because I'm transmuting the highest resonance. It's not from this world. This is returning this to perfection. If it's a perfection, it merges with everything. There is no light or dark or up and down or in or out. Everything is the same. It's all one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Very fascinating. And that's something that you teach others as well?
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Very
yeah.
cool.
Been doing it for 30 years. I had an epiphany because when I first started, maybe I was just recognizing who I was at very early age. Like the second I started that first meditation thing, the following 3 days, on the third day after that meditation thing, I channeled Lao-Tzu, my teacher now, first go. And the person that was teaching me had been doing it 60 years consciously in the physical form. And he was like, what the? How do you do this? It's like he was literally perplexed. He couldn't believe it. And I, at the time, I attribute it to being childlike in your nature, accepting everything at face value. And when you really do, you remember who you are. And so that he came in, Lao-Tzu came in, and it was like this huge, like portal vortices of energy that just saturated my physical body, and I was emitting heat and resonance there. Everyone in the class took out their sticks with marshmallows at the end of them and was cooking them because the transmission was so high. And even to this day, it happens that way. Like I can do equivalent to, pretty much 95% of everything that comes out of my mouth is it's not something I conceptually have thought of. It's just coming right from Lao-Tzu. But then I'll have a moment where I'll focus my attention and actually bring him in at a much more palpable substance where it's like my demeanor, my physicality is completely altered. And then you are able to experience it and have a very clear conversation with him. And, this is the highest level of ascension for a Taoist, is what we call direct source information. Wow. Instead of, potentially, having someone else give you the information. I think for you, you're taking it one step, another step. It's a different step. It's the same step. It could be a different one. But this is where you're having a monologue where you are this present moment. And so, if you're the universe, you're not going to ask the universe to help you out for a manifestation, magic, or healing. You will think it immediately. If you are embodying this present moment, you're all things, then it will be realized instantaneously because that's the now. Does that make sense? Which I think is where what you're sharing and imparting for your teaching. Do you look to find sort of self-evident moments apart from the realizing you are all things? Would you funnel it into a practices for manifestation, magic, healing, anything outside of that sort of like construct?
Yeah. Not exactly. In this sort of teaching, it's all about inwardness rather than trying to achieve any means or change or a fulfillment of any sort of desire to do or achieve. It's just our interest is entirely inward turn, away from the realm of perceivables, the realm of change, inwards to that which perceives all change. So yeah, it's not a sometimes people say, hey, what else can we do or what more can we do? But it's like, with this practice of self-inquiry, it's not prescribed that you need more, you need to do something else. It's about practicing the one thing we have been given, and just staying consistent with that, because that itself, the practice starts off very foggy and it continues to reveal itself with greater and greater clarity. So, and the method stays the same, because even as like we start to grow a little more advanced with it, still the same rule of self-inquiry applies. Discard the changeful and be the changeless. Just be as you are. And that continues to reveal to you greater clarity about your nature. So yeah, it's not really focused in manifestation or bringing about any change. Whatever happens, it's almost like letting experience be. Let it be and let it unfold through its natural laws. But whatever happens, continue to discern between yourself and what appears and disappears. That's the main.
Yeah. Powerful stuff, my friend.
Yeah.
And everyone has they're at their own stage. I always remind people there's a million ways up the mountain. There is no right or wrong.
Yes.
Exactly. You dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own.
Yeah, it's always about just whatever you resonate with. And I always share with others, allow your own resonance, what feels true and natural and like the next step for you to guide you, and it's always going to be what you need. Even if it like results in some sort of unpleasant experience or some apparent failure, that itself is the very thing that you needed in that moment that guides you in the right direction then from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a very powerful conversation, my dear friend.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. And this is so welcomed always for me as a cultivator, as a practitioner, as a seeker for, the oneness, the Tao, the mother, and just being this present moment. It's always invited and always a grateful moment to be able to share incredible space with amazing beings like yourself.
Yeah. I enjoy having these conversations as well. Thank you for having me on.
I'm very, very grateful to have you on. I'm going to put all your social media under this podcast, and I want all my students, all the OGs, everyone from the channel to go out and check out Sunny's offerings on his YouTube, on his 10-week program, on his website. Did you have something else that you wanted to share?
That's all. Yeah. Just those things. But yeah, anybody who happened to click on this video, if this is of something of interest to you, explore it, see where it takes you.
It's amazing. I will, in closing, ask you one last question.
Sure.
What is your definition of consciousness?
That which is. Simple. That which perceives.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I've never heard the same answer by anyone, as I shouldn't, because everyone's perception is their truth, and their truth is the only truth they need to be concerned with.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, my dear friend, for sharing your time with us today and coming on the podcast. I'm very grateful for you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. And I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Ching. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.